So when it comes to listening to the loudest voice rather than the wisest, I think that's something that could be quite interesting. Is for us to explore how that kind of affected our own journey. Because what's coming up for me is what came up for me with this was this weird voice of like realism. I'm not sure if you had this or like
Mm,
practicality, like,
mm,
oh yeah, I can't celebrate. I just have to be realistic because I've done a good work, but I still got so much more to go. Like it was almost like this weird,
yeah,
cynical, skeptical kind of voice that stopped me from celebrating things. Like if I won a jiu-jitsu competition, like literally zero celebration at all. Like zero celebration. At
mm,
the beginning, when it was like novel and new, me and my friends would go and eat at like a milkshake place or something like that. It was on the corner of, or right in the middle of Stepney Green and Whitechapel Road. I wonder if it's still there. It was next to a Nando's, and we used to go there. But then it got boring, and we didn't let ourselves celebrate anymore, which obviously, as you know, and what we do, that kind of stops you from really completing something and from internalizing the
yeah,
lessons. But it was also like a weird like loud voice inside of me that somehow equated anything positive as being naive and anything negative as being like more realistic. So that's like something that comes up for
mm,
me. Obviously, some of my clients, it comes up in a similar way. But actually, the client who inspired this, he said it was one of the biggest breakthroughs that he's had, which is funny because now almost every single breakthrough that builds on top of that is him realizing that, wait, again, it's just another loudest voice rather than the wisest. But it came up for him when he's kind of like your stereotypical, done everything he wanted to in the achievement paradigm, was able to
right.
exit, was able to live on those savings or on that money for 2, 3 years traveling, like literally doing nothing other paying multiple thousands for internal work, work with me, work with other coaches, going to India, going to an ashram, all that kind of stuff. So he did very well in that kind of environment. But it's almost like there was something that was keeping him in that zone. You know, that kind of circle of just,
Mm,
oh, I just gotta uncover the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And as soon as he started listening to that wiser voice that came up from him, remember, I mean, I don't need to tell you, but you're never telling somebody what voice they should follow. You're letting them discover it for themselves because then that's much more solid, that's much stronger. And as soon as he started doing that, now he's able to found his own business and start working on that with the same kind of
yeah.
precision and hard work and all that kind of stuff that got him to be able to take that time off. That's what it was inspired
Mm,
by. From everything I just said, like, is there anything that comes up, obviously from your journey, maybe some other examples you have? Because
yeah.
please, yeah,
Yeah, I'm just curious. You mentioned the voice for you was more of this realistic one.
yeah.
What was the voice for him like? What was the kind of loudest voice that tended to arise there?
Do you know what was funny? Because me and you talk about this personally quite a lot. Because obviously, me and you, I mean, we're not trying to say like the reason why we laugh at it is because it applied to us too. Like,
Mm.
you know, almost like that stereotypical spiritual narcissist voice that tries to be holier than thou, but is really just a bully.
Oh, yeah.
That's so prevalent in
Right.
those
Yeah. Yeah.
communities like
Yeah. Yeah.
yoga, bhakti,
Mm.
meditation, or sometimes it can even be therapy as well, where the most educated therapeutic voice actually has a lot of arrogance in it. Something in my own journey right
Yeah.
now that I went through with my own mentor or our current mentor, Pierre, is I broke through this, or I'm breaking through. I didn't break through it because it's like a continuous thing. I broke through, or I'm breaking through the polarity of arrogance versus humility. And what's arising from there is a
Mm.
really quiet, grounded confidence that's just like super chill. And that was really hard for me to look at because I was like, wow, I have a ton of arrogances. And sometimes I'm too humble, or not too humble, but that humbleness is actually me just taking too much of a back foot. The reason why I bring it up is
Yeah.
because for him, it was something similar. It wasn't necessarily around arrogance, although that voice did have a lot of arrogance, thinking it was the right thing to do, all that kind of stuff. It was more in terms of he was content to just like chill back all the time and almost be holier than thou and be like, oh, I don't need anything from the world. I can just chill and,
Mm.
you know, be a breatharian or like live on the air or something like that. Like I'm being a
Right.
bit
Yeah.
facetious, but that kind of is the caricature of that voice that seems super chill, but is actually just a dictator
Mm. Right. Yeah. So it won't
and
allow
wasn't
anyone else
wouldn't
to have a
allow
voice.
anyone else to have a voice. When we talked to it, he had a really strong, hard working, like, bro, we gotta get stuff done. We gotta
Mm.
because this is cool, but you know that you want to do something different. And it's almost like a
Yeah.
top-down chilling, which I think is why it took him so long and why, he went through so many programs with reparenting and some meditational stuff. It probably took him a while to get to see because that's quite a mature shadow. You talk about it all the time. Like
Yeah.
sometimes a shadow is more mature, no, or it can be more mature than us, but this is just as mature. When you're dealing with a shadow which is just as mature as you, then
Yeah.
unless you're really held in that space, or for more developed practitioners, they can, how do I explain this, Cameron? Like they can kind of like hold that space for themselves in like more meta awareness and kind of stepping
Yeah.
outside
Yeah.
of the mind without disowning anything.
Yeah.
Until you're there, it's so hard to deal with that because suddenly your shadow starts making really good points. And you're like, yeah, that is actually true. Like I can just chill, It is all temporary at the end.
Yeah.
And it has the best of intentions for you usually. Or almost always. I've
Yeah.
very rarely met a malicious shadow. The only exception I've had for that is maybe an introjected shadow that's become a part of your identity. But even then, it's being kept in
Mm.
place by other shadows and parts of you that think this is good for the overall system. Unless if there's just like
Yeah.
you're giving all the power to that and it's just been become like a bully. Usually happens with parents, from what I've seen. I haven't seen it happen with anyone else. Like just kind of like maybe like a father figure or a mother figure, where you feel like you have to bow
Mm.
down in front of it. But that's how it showed up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Just a few things that came up for me. Number one, I know that when for me mature shadows arise, I find it really hard to do more structured shadow work, right?
Yeah.
More like surgical shadow work is the most difficult.
Yeah.
The only thing that I worked from a personal perspective has more been this like self-liberation style,
Mm.
where it's more of it got a lot of a waking up almost involved within it,
Yeah.
and you're just allowing it to liberate beyond what you really know,
Yeah.
because you can't like look down and help it because you're kind of like at the same level now,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
actually really tricky to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to hold a lot of
And
different
then
perspectives at once.
yeah, yeah, and then I suppose the one that emerged for me in terms of like the loudest voice was a big challenge was less of a specific belief or idea, but more of a always going to the pain in me,
Hmm.
right? If there was light and celebration, but if there was a small bit of tension and resistance,
Mm.
like all attention on my resistance,
Yeah.
and like fix that, sort that, you
Yeah.
know, our next tension, all right, sort that, fix that.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the loudest voice for me of like, well, there's so much light already here. Why not give space to that?
Mm.
And there's still tension. Yeah, but there's 90% light. Yeah, but there's 10% tension.
Yeah.
And that was really hard to grasp because I didn't want to neglect myself. I
Yeah.
think that's such a thing from like in fourth person perspective, where
I
in
had the
third
same
person
thing.
perspective, you kind of, yeah, you
Yeah.
kind of neglect yourself so much in third person perspective because you just push through
Yeah. You are a
and you're like,
dictator.
I'm not listening to, yeah, you're
Yeah.
just a huge dictator and you're like, I'm not going to listen to you guys at all. We got to go to our goal,
Yeah.
right? And that's why 3.5 often is very good at achieving and we can integrate that. But then we go to fourth person perspective and it's like, oh, I don't want to not listen to you guys anymore. I don't want to not listen to myself anymore.
Yeah.
And so that louder voice just kept being pain or resistance or tension. And it stopped me, similarly to what you said, in a different way, moving into celebration and light.
Mm.
So it was always the next thing to fix, the next thing to pick
Yeah.
up, the next thing to integrate,
Yeah.
you know? And because it was like a painful sensation in some ways, it was really, really hard to ignore.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that a lot of clients as well,
Mm.
where sometimes they have trouble moving into the celebration of light because they don't want to ignore the resistance. They don't want to ignore because it might have wisdom there. And it does in many ways. There is wisdom in our shadows and allowing them to dissolve and come into their light. There's also so much wisdom in the light that's already here. And I think when that started to tip over, where I could be able to be really content with the light that's already here and hold a understanding of whether is still resistance, whether still is shadow, not like denying that, but hold it as an understanding that we're gonna get there.
Mm.
That's gonna be included. That's gonna be integrated. But the maturity was almost seeing, oh, we don't get to have this great light system. One bad sneeze.
Bless you.
That's me. Thank you. If we don't support the light that's already here, you
Yeah.
know, it's kind of that thing of almost trying to save someone, but bring yourself down to their level, and you're
Mm-hmm.
both drowning.
Yeah.
That was happening internally. I wonder if you could relate to that at all.
Yeah, of course. But what's coming up? The question that's coming up for me, like, let's say, what would you say to somebody who does feel like they're kind of drowning in that? And is a bit
Mm,
skeptical about the exact problem that you just said that you had, and also I had as well, where you're like 90% of the way there, but you just can't ignore that last 10% that's nagging. Like, oh, but what
yeah.
about this? Like, I have some tension or there's some anxiety. What would you say to that person?
Yeah. What I normally do with clients there, and actually within myself, is I just say, why don't we just allow, 20% of the mind to just be holding compassion there,
Mm,
just for that tension, not going into it, not diving in and healing the shadow, just holding compassion and love and support
yeah.
for the tension that's there. And just while that's holding compassion, love, and support, why don't we just celebrate the light that you just told me about,
Mm,
the light that's already here,
mm,
that wonderful, peaceful feeling we've just been working with. I wonder what it's like to just be in that real deep peace and yet
yeah.
still hold compassion for that tension.
Hmm.
I find that works really well because we don't neglect it, we include it.
Yeah.
We're just not diving into it. We're not
Yeah.
falling, collapsing again.
Yeah. That's another blind spot, huh? That reminds me of, which is the people that don't just hold space, or people that don't just hold space and love for like a shadow, but they really try and dive into it every single time
Mm,
and embrace it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. This
yeah.
is ring any bells, does it,
Oh
Cameron?
dear. Oh, for sure. Like
Yeah.
just being so in that story of collapse. And
Yeah.
even when there's light, coming back into the collapse.
Yeah. They're
And
like,
then just,
no.
oh, yeah, just like, no, I can't be with the light right now. I'm going to feel the deep suffering and
Yeah.
heal it, but not really heal it because
Not
I'm
really
just
heal it
experiencing,
because
I'm
it's
just
still there.
reveling in it at this point.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Yeah.
almost like and because you experience often almost like with crying, when you finish crying, you feel good often, right? You've
Yeah.
kind of released a
Very
bit.
cathartic.
But because, yeah, it's a cathartic experience, there's nothing wrong with that. And when that's part of a structured healing, we make real change.
Mm.
But if we're just addicted to the cathartic experience,
Yeah.
almost like just going through the branch again and again and again, if we view it as a tree,
Hmm.
right? Never taking out the root, never taking out the trunk, but
Yeah.
just, feeling through the branch again and again and again, thinking we're releasing. But actually, we're often just dwelling and almost addicted to that. And I was very addicted because it felt like progress
Mm.
in a way of I'm moving from processing.
Yeah.
But the reality, I wasn't really processing. I was just going through the same feeling pattern because the structure hadn't changed. The problem was still there.
Yeah.
The construct was still alive and real, but I had just played and processed the emotional tone at the top and become just too in love with that process
How
of
did you move through
collapse
that
and release.
of being too in
I
love
think
with it?
it, yeah, I mean, I think part of it is, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is we just go through it so many times that it finally clicks.
Mm.
But like, oh, this isn't that helpful.
This isn't
And
actually
then if
working.
we,
Yeah.
yeah, and then if we have good mentors, we have a better process. You
Yeah.
know, like I feel like telling people not to do something but not giving them a better solution is just really annoying. And
Yeah.
it's like a really common thing of just, this is terrible, don't do that. What should I do? Just don't do that. So
Just don't do that.
thanks,
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Yeah. It's like tearing
You
it
know,
down
but
without another suggestion.
yeah, but getting curious what created the emotion in the beginning. And I think getting in touch with ESR, right, Evolution of Shadow Resolution, created by Kim Barter, having a much more structured approach
Hmm.
and seeing, like, really even seeing just that mental model of symptom to trigger to internal process to core seed, and seeing that I was often very much feeling the symptom, right? And
Mm.
starting to get that that's what I was doing and starting to click. But it only really clicked once I had the model and the understanding.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then going through it a good few amount of times and being like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can get more curious about the internal process, the um, the core seed,
Mm.
and oh, I can just give it back.
Yeah. It doesn't have to
And I
stay
remember
here.
because I did, yeah, it doesn't have to stay here. That was a big one as well. Like, oh, it can just be given back. And I
Yeah.
think
That was a
because
really
we
big
went
one.
through,
Yeah.
yeah, huge. And you know, we went for a few programs with Kim. I think one of the amazing things was actually witnessing it, like how quick it was done.
Yeah.
Because when I heard it on the page and read it,
I
I
was like, is that
was
really?
like, this is cool, this is great.
Yeah. Is that
But I
really?
didn't get how quick it could be,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? Like, I remember when we were applying it without meeting Kim,
Yeah.
it would take us like multiple sessions to go through that process. But then
Mm.
he would do it in like
Yeah.
10 minutes, 5 minutes sometimes,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that, and then it was like, why don't you just give that back? And I'm like,
Why
can
don't
I give that
I?
back? Can
Yeah.
I? You sure?
Yeah.
Like, is that allowed?
Mm.
And so part of it was almost his modeling of just, oh, you can just do it like this.
Hmm.
And that being so easy, let it drop away that I needed to do all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Because, oh, it can just be easy. I can just give that back.
You could almost say it's like before that, that kind of level of breakthrough is almost out of your comfort zone, your emotional comfort zone. We have an emotional comfort zone, which is,
Yeah.
if we break it down into the binary of if something's too bad, we have to do like avoidance cycles in order to get back into something which is good. That can be healthy avoidance cycles, like going to the gym or like going to do a hobby. Like in Cameron's case, it's jujitsu. My case would be something like Latin dance, and or it can be something unhealthy, like porn, scrolling, having risky sex. What's another one? Like any kind of drug kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then
Like any
there's
addiction, alcohol.
exactly, and then there's the top one where this kind of you can say if somebody's just done. Just to be clear, we're not endorsing any kind of drugs or anything like that. But if someone's like taken ayahuasca or mushrooms or something like that, and it's like a super healing experience for them, but it's
Mm.
so out of their reality that it's uncomfortable for them. Like it's like
Yeah.
they feel
Yeah.
so good that they have to try and come back down and medicate themselves that way. I feel like for a lot of people, if they don't have the correct mentor, like we did, like you just said, in like with Kim, who can hold that certainty for them, it's like oh yeah, that's not possible. Oh no, I've just had this problem for 10
Yeah,
years. It can't go. I'm not trying to say here that if it's not gone in
yeah,
10 minutes, then, you know, there's a problem here. Sometimes things do take a little bit of extra time. I'll give you an example from Kim, actually. When you're dealing with people in his work, psychotherapist for 30 years, has his own business, but then also had court orders and people coming to him, ordered by the state to come and do psychotherapy with him and all that kind of stuff. So he has a whole range of characters, experience, like doesn't get more experience than Kim, really.
yeah.
And he says when you're dealing with shadows around sexual abuse or sexual assault, you have to kind of heal them at each age sometimes. So
Mm,
obviously the work, like when if it's a child, you have to work with them then. And right then they can't even comprehend what sexuality is really. So for them it's like, oh, it's just like an owie. It just something hurts, right?
yeah,
And you have to deal with them there. And actually the most important thing you have to do there is to make sure their parents don't project anything else onto them
yeah,
and any
yeah.
more storylines onto it. But then as the child gets older and they become and they have a sexual awakening which happens what, mid-teens, early teens, late teens, depends on the
Yeah,
person,
yeah,
something around that area. And then now they can start to backwards rationalize and realize what that was. And they need to do some therapy then, you know, because now the meaning around that has changed. And then usually you have to, he says that people should come back, or they usually have to come back when they are around the same age as the perpetrator that did it to them, right?
mm,
So this is an
yeah,
example of really good healing done at every single stage, but it just took a bit longer. So we're not saying
yeah.
that it's supposed to look all in one case. That's a very specific case. But 9 times out of 10, and I'm saying this to myself as much as anybody, right? Like it really, there's nothing special about this storyline that means that it has to stay. That's another thing I find, right? Like there's this specialness, like somehow this is just who I am, and there's a real connectedness to identity and to
Yeah.
personality. And I think some of that's definitely like a stage thing. I mean, I'm just thinking of some examples of my own life. Like I was definitely very connected to being a fighter in jiu-jitsu. I was definitely very connected to being like a hardcore meditator, for being somebody who just
Mm,
quit everything and moved across continent in order to follow his dreams. I definitely had some things that were very tied to my identity, and that's a fine. And this is something I still struggle with actually, but it's something which I'm really focusing on. Relates to that kind of arrogance humility dichotomy. Is there's when people are there, there's like a real fullness and beauty. Not like, oh, we can just appreciate it, but really they're just like somewhere down there. Like, no, there's actually something which is perfectly fine. Just like if
yeah,
somebody is bigger than me or you, that's perfectly fine too. So there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. It's just that that does make it a little bit more difficult to maybe feel like you can let go of bad beliefs, like you can reintegrate apart this self sabotaging, like you can re own your power in the world in this specific situation,
yeah.
right? Like a lot of it comes down to that weird attachment we have. Like maybe for you, you could speak on this when I was hearing you saying, like, and obviously I was there when you were going through it, when you were really into feeling is healing, all that kind of stuff. I
Mm,
would guesstimate that part of the reason for that is why that never got fully healed is because it meant that if that was fully healed, you wouldn't get to go through that process again. Like you would have to give
yeah,
up that really cathartic cycle.
yeah. I mean, for me, it wasn't even about the cathartic experience. It was the progression that like
Ah,
gave me
yeah,
a
that makes
progression,
sense.
right?
Yeah.
You know that that's where my mind goes a
That's
lot, right? We
a
That's always
massive
a key
cheeky smile
theme.
is always a
Yeah,
sign
I
that
mean,
Cameron was enjoying his time back
so
then.
the thing that actually broke the state reliance for me,
Mm.
right? Because I mean, Aaron knows better than anyone, but for me, especially in Deep 4.0, state experiences, going through cathartic releases was a real. I'm saying addiction, but I'm light on the word because the truth is it was more just this moving through a bit of a stage. There was
Yeah.
good work done still at that stage. It
Of
wasn't
course.
something I regret at all, and it wasn't something that was harmful. It just wasn't something that was it could produce suffering at points, right? It was keeping me
Yeah.
stuck at a place where I wasn't getting the depth of healing, but I'm fortunate to have at this time. But it was because of the underlying story, you
Mm.
know, like someone might get a similar kind of grasping of states, but it might come from a completely different place. We've got a friend who has been very deep in state work, but it's a completely different place to how
Yeah.
he gets into it to me. And for me, it's always been about this progression, this achievement. And that was just another version of it showing up. And every cathartic release is like, oh, I've done good work. I've progressed in
Mm.
some capacity. Right.
Yeah.
And so, we were speaking about that stickiness of identity. That was the stickiness was, oh, I'm stuck and sticky of the progression because I want to keep progressing because progressing means something for whatever reason. Progressing means that I'm moving into love or safety, right? I'm constantly progressing. Like
Interesting.
it makes me feel comfortable.
Mm.
And so once that started to break, that's when I became more comfortable with letting that pattern go.
Mm-hmm.
But an interesting one that I think is even more recent over the last year or so has been business. Like
Mm.
that, because you're speaking about a lot of stickiness of identity. I struggled for a long time being very attached to my identity around business, right? View as a fighter for me, it was like I need to. There's a need here of being seen as a good, like someone who does really well at business, like a real entrepreneur,
But you've always been
right?
entrepreneurial, so that makes sense, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there was a real identity to it, and it was like all this meaning around it. If I'm this entrepreneur, then and there was this grand life and all this worthiness attached to it, all of this. Yeah, worthiness was the key one actually, right?
Mm.
Worthiness and like a real support and safety. So when I reclaimed that, it was like, oh wow, the business stuff isn't so important. And
Mm.
what's funny is I started having like fantasies of being like a firefighter, which is like completely different.
Yeah, I have
But
random stuff like that too.
you know, uh, it's not something I want to actually do. But it was like, oh, I was really happy when I experienced it. Oh, I don't feel like I need to be on an identity level with some entrepreneur or business owner.
You actually mentioned it
I
on
don't
this
need to be stuck
podcast.
to it.
You like had a fantasy
Yeah.
about being some pub owner or something like that, like
Oh
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
UK.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the pub owner was one, but I think the firefighter was more of a healthier version of that. The pub owner felt more like a escape of it,
Okay,
like
yeah.
going really drastically the opposite. But
Hmm.
when the firefighter one started coming through, it felt more healthy. It felt more like, oh, the construct is not want to escape to be a firefighter. It's like, oh, if I did that job, I probably wouldn't make a ton of money, but I would enjoy my life and I would feel like I'm doing something fulfilling and I would have a great community.
Yeah.
And that sounds really nice, you
Mm.
know? And I don't feel a need to go and do that. But it's like my priorities have changed since the identity around the business, around money, has started to drop away. But I don't need that to be whatever it may have been.
Mm. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
So is there anything that's coming up for you in terms of maybe like someone you've worked with recently that's had a similar breakthrough to that so that we can get a little bit of a different angle from just your story about how maybe that looks like for somebody who thinks in a little bit of a different way or has different values, has like a little bit of a different fantasies and all that kind of stuff, because I think that could be really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, we touched on this at the beginning, actually. It's a little bit different, a little bit. We were even going to keep it for the next podcast, but it's kind of quite
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Is I worked with this guy, amazing guy, and he's been really progressing with shadow work for a good 6 months now, to the point where he literally got to the point where he was like, I have no problems,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Which is really amazing, right? He generally wasn't feeling stress or anxiety. He was moving through, a tough roles because he's a sales manager and there's real like you need to perform. But he's getting all these opportunities. And some of the times they go really amazingly, and sometimes they don't go as well. And he's been incredibly in equanimity and neutrality around that. We started to realize that the neutrality was becoming not just something to come back to that we can celebrate and appreciate,
Mm.
but it was becoming a dominant voice, right? It
Right.
was becoming like this is it now. And neutrality is the thing.
Mm.
And it was almost like neutrality is the base by which everything comes down to,
Yeah.
right? If I'm experiencing stress or pain, I just got to dissolve the shadow and come back to neutrality.
Mm.
And yet, that was creating a life that was more peaceful, but was a little bit more boring, a
Yeah.
little less full, not so exciting. And for a good while, for a long time, that was like a huge relief.
Yeah.
Like after the crazy and downs of heavy 3.5 stuff, it was like, oh, thank God. But it just started to become moved from being a relief to being like, oh, is this it? Is
Mm.
this life? Oh, maybe I want a bit of that like up and downness.
Mm.
What's this about?
Yeah.
And there was this kind of thing of it's either neutral or it's kind of like stressful and slightly painful. But
Yeah.
then we started to see that, and he started to see that, oh, he's generating the neutrality. The neutrality is a voice in many ways too. Right? That's not like the base of consciousness.
Yeah.
That's just
No.
neutrality. You
Yeah.
know, when they got mixed together of like this is the end goal, this
Mm.
is the voice, this is the thing, almost like what you were sharing with your guy at the start. Like this is the spiritual chillness,
Yeah.
right?
Very
It
similar,
was kind of
actually.
similar, but with neutrality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember he had such a relief when he realized that wasn't the final stage. That was just something he could pierce through. And he saw the positive intentions, but it just wants to remind him that you don't have to worry. These aren't real problems. Right?
Mm.
Isn't that such a beautiful thing? You don't have to worry about real problems. That was just a positive intention.
Yeah.
But then the storyline was that the only way to do that was neutrality. But
Wow.
as he attuned to the positive intention, he started to realize, oh, wait, I can experience that there is no problems. I don't need to worry. And yet, there is also no limitations.
Mm.
There is also a vast fullness. I can really appreciate and be grateful for everything.
Yeah.
Right? There's a real fullness here.
Yeah. Yeah. Not that emptiness that me and you struggled with
Yeah,
actually when we were
yeah,
but in a
yeah,
different way from the Buddhist practices.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. The more of the meaninglessness, emptiness, because kind of they
Yeah.
stray the line there a little bit.
And then making the meaninglessness really meaningful as well. That's the other funny
Yeah,
part
yeah,
about it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember one thing I said, I was like, yeah, and sometimes we just see that the meaninglessness of neutrality is a story too. And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it is. And he literally did that, right? It
Yeah.
was really, really cool to see.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's just a story as well. And then what emerged underneath, because he thought that was like for underneath was for neutrality, but once he saw underneath, there was just this fullness and this aliveness. Yet it kept the qualities that the neutrality was trying to bring of, oh, I don't have to worry. I don't have to make problems. I don't have to get sucked into storylines. But I don't have to deaden my aliveness to do that.
No.
It's not one or the other, right? I don't have to listen to the voice that is extremely well-meaning, but is limiting my experience in this way,
Yeah. Whenever
right? In the
you're
way it thinks it has to be.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry for interrupting. Did you have something else to say?
That's all right. No, no, no. You go. I'm
No.
curious.
It's like whenever there's a monochrome or an absolutist theme running through your
Yeah,
system, there's always some kind of a bully in the room, you know? Might be a benign
yeah,
bully, like one that means really well and that no one really knows is happening, but there's almost always, because internally, if we're an internal ecosystem, which we are, like a jungle, right? Like a jungle is the most
mm,
biodiverse place on Earth. That's how I view our internal system. So diverse. There's so much happening that whenever there's like a deadening or a dulling sensation, like where it's just one point of view and that's it, there's a time and a place for that, always. Like sometimes you need that clarity to just push. But when it's a repeated thing where it's just coming back to that, normally it's because we're disowning a little bit of the fullness of consciousness,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like seeing it's not even about, I guess for us, it was for a time period about not being in the highs and lows anymore.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was for a time. But now it's almost like moving into being totally okay with the highs and lows,
Yeah.
right?
The, almost the way I'm seeing it is we go to that reality of the highs and lows, and then we
Mm,
flip it, and that becomes the horizontal expression, right?
right.
And then almost that we become flat there.
Mm.
But I think from that flatness, then we emerge into the fullness. But it's a very different fullness. It's almost like it's really hard to express this,
It's not like on a
but there's
graph
almost
that will
a
explain it. Because there are highs and
yeah,
lows, but it's not highs and lows at the same time. It's just the
yeah,
fullness that is the reality that you're in.
yeah,
There's the
yeah,
whole spectrum available to you. Please.
yeah. Because it doesn't feel like we're going back. It doesn't feel like we're going back into the highs and lows where we're really
No.
attached to it. It's almost like we're able to have that. It's almost like we're so comfortable with that that we don't need to be in aggressive equanimity,
Yeah.
right?
Or
We're
aggressive
so
equanimity. I
like
loved a bit of aggressive
yeah,
equanimity back in the day. Now
I
you.
love the aggressive equanimity. I'm just gonna be in peace. I'm gonna be in
Yeah.
peace.
Yeah.
I'm just
Oh,
like
I'm not
holding the
in
peace
peace.
real tight.
Let me sit for another 3 hours to make sure I'm in
Yeah,
peace. Yeah.
yeah. And what emerges seems to be more of a subtle equanimity of
Mm.
like, oh, that's not ideal. That's not so fun, but I'm still okay,
Do you know what it's
you know?
like? You're no longer in the world of the highs and lows. You're beyond the
Yeah,
world. So it's still
yeah,
there happening, but because you're not tied into that identity or storyline that this is your world, you can appreciate it so much more, actually. You're getting more fullness than you ever did because you were riding the wave beforehand, right? Like going down into it. But now, because you can see the whole thing and experience all of it at the same time, there's like so much more of a richness that comes with that experience. Like that's where fulfillment and happiness of doing all the same stuff, but still feeling so much better about it becomes, at least for me.
yeah, 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 absolutely. You know what comes to my mind? Actually, an experience I had this week. I told you about it via text, but I got stuck in an elevator
Oh, yeah.
for like 45 minutes. It was honestly a really in kind of intense experience because it just starts
Mm,
going up and I'm not paying any attention, but I just hear like a crash and
yeah.
then it all goes fully dark in the elevator. And we're
Oh,
in
no.
Southeast Asia, and so
You don't know the
you don't
safety.
trust the
Yeah.
infrastructure too much. So it's all dark. I have to put the torch on, and then none of the buttons work. And the worst part is the emergency button doesn't work, right? It
Oh,
doesn't go
bro.
anywhere. And there's no service. And
Oh,
it's also a
no.
very quite a small elevator shaft with no mirror as well, so it feels very small. And
Yeah.
it's very felt very small in that moment,
Oh, of course.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I ended up being there for about 45 minutes. And it was just a really interesting experience that I ended up being really happy with at the end because I thought it really showed that this work does work,
Mm,
you know, because in that moment there was fear arising and like intense fear that, you know, at least I am probably you too, just we don't experience that on a daily basis as normal humans where we're like in touch with the vulnerability that is there. You know,
yeah.
like I don't often, unless I'm in like sometimes more spiritual phase contemplate death that much.
Yeah.
In that moment, I wasn't close, but it definitely comes to your mind more when you're trapped in an elevator shaft and you can't reach anyone.
Hmm.
And it's much more there. But I remember just noticing that the fear would arrive in waves. And it was something about that noticing that really calmed me down.
Really?
So suddenly
Do you know
I
what it
wasn't,
was?
because part of the fear, it was almost like I've, one of my biggest fears has been fear. Like I'm afraid more
Wow.
of, I'm not, I don't have a fear so much intellectually of death so
Right.
much, right? At least intellectually. But I'm afraid of the fear of like a really, really intense life experience. Like the fear is what makes me more afraid, which is a really interesting one, really interesting
Mm.
construct.
Yeah.
So in that moment, confronting it, because the fear did arise, it wasn't shying away,
Yeah. Wasn't
and
pulling
being
any
really
punches.
comfortable with it. It wasn't pulling any punches, right?
Yeah.
Because it would really phase in of like, am I fucked? Like,
Yeah.
what do I do?
Yeah.
Because I literally, what do I do? I don't know.
Yeah.
Kick the
Yeah.
emergency button more. Try my phone that has complete deadness. There's no emergency. I can't even call 999, even if I wanted
Yeah.
to, right? It's not going to work. I'm banging on the door. I'm fairly relaxed while doing it, but I'm like doing this, help. I've made a peace in my mind, but I could be here for a few hours. I'm not straining my voice. I'm
Yeah.
doing like every 5 minutes, bang, bang, help. But almost making peace with the fear got me to a place of like a really quite wonderful experience
Wow.
in a very strange way, right? Because it wasn't all that. 'Cause sometimes I would go into the fear,
Mm.
right? Almost like what we're speaking about, where it's almost you're in the world or out
Yeah.
of the world, but
Yeah.
observing the world, still including the world. And so
Hmm.
sometimes the fear would grip me where I was in it because it was quite an intense experience. But there was also lots of moments where I was just with it,
Yeah.
and it was a really peaceful place.
Hmm.
And it kind of, in some ways, broke a few constructs of the fear of fear.
Wow.
And
Breaking
so
the
I
construct
ended
of
up
it.
being, yeah, yeah, to some degree.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's fully gone, but definitely to some degree that is lessened at least. Because it was like, oh, okay, well, it was like the fear of the fear and the feel of the real fear. Because it was this construct that like real fear is suddenly emerging in really challenging situations or something.
Mm.
And so that started to break down. And then afterwards, once I finally got out, my girlfriend, she actually did really amazingly. She realized because I'd gone down to get bread for our breakfast that I was gone way longer than I normally go. And so she just went out to look for me. And she actually apparently heard me from a lift shaft, even though I was on 5 or 6 and we're on 11. Apparently she heard me. But she said she just had a weird feeling. And so she actually put her ear to the lift shaft, which is
Yeah.
like really
Wow.
cool to hear. She
Some
heard
real
me.
awareness-based
And then she
systems going
got,
on there.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally. She said she had like an intuition. So I was like, oh, that's cool. So she
Yeah.
ended up
Super
saving
cool.
me with the help of a nice maintenance man, because it was like literally it was in between 5 and 6. So they
Yeah.
had to open the doors and then had to somehow get the lift to come back up, which I didn't want to do apparently.
So
But I
what was
remember
that
feeling
experience
after that
like?
experience,
The moment before you were like, you knew you were going to be saved to the moment, like, what was that moment like internally, but just in
well,
general?
you know what happened? Because the moment I heard their voice, because it was the man says, okay, okay. I'm like, is he speaking to me? Is he hearing me?
Yeah.
I'm like, are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? He's like, okay, okay. I'm like, that's not an answer. I think so. I think, is that
That's
an
a
answer?
very neutral answer. He could be speaking to
Yeah,
someone on the phone like that.
literally. And then I heard Lamar, my girlfriend, go, we're here. I'm like, there was something in me. And I actually got quite emotional in that moment,
Oh, of course.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For a moment, I was like, oh, okay, I'm actually going to be saved. Okay, cool. And then it took like 15 minutes for them to actually get me out, where I just kind of came back to quite a neutral state. But I remember as I came out, there was just an experience of like almost freedom a little
Mm,
bit. Freedom was kind of the thing that emerged. It was like, oh wow, that happened. It was okay. Not even that it was okay, like I was okay. It was like it was okay that the fear happened.
right.
That was the thing that was really meaningful to me. It was like I was okay
Yeah.
with the fear. Like in a moment that for me was very real, very intense.
Mm,
And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't get to take away from me in some way. I don't actually need to be afraid of it, afraid of the fear in that way.
that didn't have to take away from me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It was like the feeling of almost the construct was that the real fear, right, would
Mm,
take my power away in some ways. It was like everything I'm
wow.
doing is almost playing, right? We're playing in the easy mode of life where we've got nice comfort and it's beautiful outside
Mm,
and I got some wonderful people that I spend life with. And when it comes to the real hard moments, it's not going to hold up. And so it was almost like, oh, even in the real fear, it doesn't take away from me. It doesn't take away from who I am, who I get to be, how I get to show up, and how I
yeah.
get to experience life. And with that came a real freedom in not fearing the fear at least as much.
Not fearing the fear at least as much.
Yeah.
That's like how clients can sometimes be ashamed of the shame or guilty
Yeah.
that they're feeling guilty. Fear of
Yeah.
fear,
Yeah.
all of that kind of thing. It's those big picture, almost like meta shadows that people have. Where if they were just to get away
Absolutely.
from that reaction, the experience itself is just an experience. Like one of our mentors in the Dharma never had direct instruction from him, but he was, I guess you could say, he was one of the students of our teacher's teachers, Delson Armstrong from the Dharma Sukha
Mm.
Foundation. He talks about it from more of a spiritual concept, but I still think it's relevant where he says, when there's no longer an experiencer and there's no longer the experienced, all that's left is just the experience itself,
Yeah.
which is just, oh, there's fear. There's an experience of fear. There's
Yeah.
also an experience of seeing that fear arise and pass away.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else
I think
coming up
that's
for
a
you,
good place
sir?
to.
Yep, no,
I
not at
think
all.
that's a good last line, I think.
Perfect. Okay. We'll see you on the next one.